At 4:11 a.m. on November 14, 1944, just outside the fractured remains of Schmidt, Germany, Oberlieutenant Klaus von Richter felt a rare moment of absolute certainty. Sitting in the heated cab of the lead Opel Blitz in a 6-truck supply convoy, he adjusted his ironed collar and lit a cigarette. He was 5 miles behind the active front, shielded by the impenetrable darkness of the Hürtgen Forest. He felt safe. He felt superior. In the next 40 seconds, his entire command would be paralyzed. 40 seconds until the logistics of a division ground to a screeching halt. 30 seconds until the invincible German machine met a ghost. 300 yards away, Corporal Elias Thorne lay face down in a freezing irrigation ditch, the pungent smell of stagnant water and rotted beets filling his lungs. He wasn't holding a bazooka. He wasn't calling in a battery of 105mm howitzers. He was gripping a rusted manual winch connected to 12 jagged 30-inch circular saw blades he'd scavenged from a ruined timber mill 3 miles back. This wasn't war by the book. What Thorne was about to do had been explicitly forbidden by High Command during his last inspection. It flipped armored doctrine on its head, replacing high explosives with civilian logic. It was a serrated barrier, and it was about to prove that a machinist from Wisconsin could do more damage than a B-17 bomber. Before the draft board called his name, Elias Thorne was a saw filer in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. He spent 10 hours a day in a dimly lit shack, maintaining the massive high-carbon steel blades that fed the Great Lakes timber industry. He understood the anatomy of steel, how it breathed, how it tensioned, and how it failed. He knew that a serrated edge doesn't just cut, it grabs, bites, and consumes whatever it touches with relentless mechanical hunger. His enlistment was a comedy of errors. At Fort Benning, instructors grew frustrated with his unorthodox approach to demolition. While other recruits practiced the standard placement of TNT, Thorne was busy measuring the tensile strength of bridge cables and calculating the torsion of truck axles. His officers saw a stubborn laborer who couldn't follow a manual. They failed to see a man who could fix things with scrap and think in angles that no West Point graduate had ever considered in their pristine lecture halls. The tactical problem was a narrow, steep-banked stretch of Route 12, the only supply vein for a German Panther division holding the ridge. The Germans had turned it into a gauntlet. Every time an American squad tried to mine the road, they were picked off by snipers or suppressed by a hidden MG-42 nest that seemed untouchable by standard army maneuvers. The emotional weight of the official strategy was measured in dog tags. Private Danny Russo, 19, from Brooklyn. He had a lucky marble in his pocket, and a letter to his kid sister promised he'd be home for her graduation. He died face down in the mud trying to plant a standard M1A1 mine. Sergeant Mike Pop Sullivan, 34, from Boston, a father of 3 who'd survived North Africa only to be cut down by a German scout car while following a flanking maneuver straight out of a 1938 field manual. Captain Miller, the company commander, was a man of rigid sensibilities. His uniform was always pressed, even in the mud of the Hürtgen. When Thorne suggested an improvised non-explosive roadblock using mill scrap, Miller nearly had him brought up on charges. "We use approved ordnance or we use nothing, Corporal. If it isn't in the manual, it doesn't exist on my battlefield. You will stand down or face the stockade." Thorne spent his nights watching the road from a concealed foxhole, observing a tiny flaw the strategists missed. The German trucks moved with a rhythmic, predictable bounce as they hit a specific frost heave. He calculated the ground clearance of an Opel Blitz, exactly 10 inches, and noted the high-pressure rubber tires. To Thorne, the road wasn't a path for soldiers, it was a conveyor belt, and every belt has a jam point. The rejection from command was final. Miller threatened Thorne with a court-martial for unauthorized field modifications after catching him welding scrap in the motor pool, but Thorne knew the math didn't lie. The manual was written for a different war. He was fighting this one. He went rogue. Working in total silence under a heavy canvas tarp to hide the sparks, Thorne welded his 30-inch saw blades to a heavy industrial chain at a 43-degree leading angle. This wasn't a trap designed to kill men, it was a trap designed to kill physics. He waited for a night of heavy fog, dragging his 200-pound sawblade snake into the mud of Route 12 with zero support and a single silenced carbine. The sensory details of the night were overwhelming. The smell of wet iron, the mud sucking at his boots, and the rhythmic thumping of his own heart. Thorne positioned himself in the ditch, 480 yards from the German checkpoint. He had anchored one end of the chain to a sheared oak stump. The other was hooked to his winch. Von Richter's convoy rounded the bend. The lead truck's headlights flickered through the mist like the eyes of a predator. 100 yards. 50 yards. Thorne exhaled halfway, held his breath, and threw his entire body weight into the winch. The chain snapped taut, invisible in the dark, lifting the jagged blades exactly 14 inches off the ground. The sound was not an explosion, but a horrific metallic shriek that echoed through the trees. The first saw blade didn't just pop the tire, it acted as a gear, biting into the rubber and walking itself up into the wheel well. The high carbon steel shredded the brake lines and wrapped around the front axle in a split second. The truck didn't just stop, it pole vaulted. The second truck slammed into the first, its own tires meeting the secondary blades. Short, punchy, ruin. 6 trucks, an entire night's worth of fuel and 88mm shells were transformed into a mangled heap of scrap metal in under a minute. No muzzle flashes, no return fire, just the sound of hissing steam and the confused shouting of von Richter as he realized his safe road had turned into a graveyard of logistics. The immediate result was staggering. The Panther Division on the ridge, starved of fuel and ammunition, was forced to abandon their positions within 48 hours. Thorne's illegal roadblock had saved an estimated 200 American lives that would have been lost in a direct assault. The German line buckled simply because they couldn't get the wheels turning. The aftermath followed a familiar pattern of military bureaucracy. The Army eventually adopted the Serrated Barrier concept, refining it into the tire-shredding strips used by military police today. But they never gave Thorne a medal. His name was scrubbed from the official reports to protect the reputation of the officers who had nearly court-martialed him for his genius. In late 1945, Elias Thorne returned to the Wisconsin woods. He didn't brag at the VFW. He didn't tell his wife about the night he broke a convoy with a chain. He had cows to milk and a mill to run. He went back to the rhythmic, quiet life of a man who knew exactly how things worked and how to break them when the world required it. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.